The night air in Akuzi carried the weight of silence, broken only by the low, wet grunts of pigs turning in their sleep. Beneath a straw roof barely held together by rope and rod, Beulah lay curled in a corner of the pen, her face smeared with the same muck the pigs rolled in. Her skin itched from the dried slurry on her arms, and the bitter cold of the mud beneath her bones made her shiver, but no one had offered her a blanket. No one ever did. The village of Akuzi had forgotten kindness where she was concerned. Since her father vanished months ago, swallowed by the forest on a routine hunt and never returned, her stepmother had changed overnight. No longer pretending to be gentle for her husband's sake, she cast Beulah from the house with only a bundle of rags and an old bowl. "You're filth," she'd hissed. "And filth belongs with filth." So the pigpen became her room, her bed, and her cage. Each morning as the sun stretched over the rust-colored hills, villagers passed the pen on their way to the river or the market. Most didn't look. Those who did rarely hid their disgust. "Pig girl," the children would shout, their giggles shrill as they flung pebbles into the pen. Some aimed for her face, others just for fun. Once, a stone struck her brow and drew blood. She'd clutched the cut in silence, unwilling to cry where they could see her. Tears only gave them more mock. Her stepbrothers, brash boys who once pulled her braids and stole her food even while their father was alive, now roared with laughter whenever they passed. "Even the pigs are more useful than you," the eldest would shout, waving a wooden spear. "At least they can be sold." Sometimes she turned her back to them. Sometimes she didn't move at all. But always, when they were gone, the pigs would draw close. Not in malice, not in curiosity, but in something else entirely. They pressed their cold, wet snouts into her sides as if to offer warmth. One even lay across her feet at night. Their presence was strange, but not unkind. Stranger still was the feeling that pulsed in the silence between their snorts, a rhythm in the mud, a hum just under the sound of her breath. As if the earth itself was breathing with her. The worst of it wasn't the filth, nor the bruises on her knees from sleeping on stones. It wasn't even the endless laughter or hunger. It was the dreams. She dreamed of her father's voice calling to her from deep beneath the mud. He never spoke words she could understand, just a gentle murmur, a voice shaped like water. Sometimes she saw his silhouette through the mist, arm outstretched, standing behind the pigs. But no matter how she reached, he always drifted further away. One night, while the rain beat steady against the roof and the pigs shuffled in their sleep, Beulah lay half awake, her stomach tight with hunger. She curled tighter into herself, pulling her torn wrapper over her shoulder, when something warm and heavy settled beside her. A pig, the largest of them, pressed its body against hers, its belly rising and falling in rhythm with her own. She thought nothing of it at first. They often lay near her now. She'd grown used to the strange comfort. But then its snout brushed her ear. And it spoke. "Sleep, child. The mud remembers." The voice was not a grunt, not an illusion. It was clear, low, and human. Spoken just beneath her skin, like a whisper inside her bones. She froze. Her breath caught in her throat. Slowly, she turned her head, heart hammering like a drum, and stared into the pig's eyes. They gleamed in the dark, not red, not wild, but knowing. Her pulse throbbed in her neck. She blinked once. Twice. The pig closed its eyes and nuzzled closer, as if nothing had happened. Beulah stayed still the rest of the night, eyes wide open, staring into the shadows, unable to sleep. Her thoughts ran wild. Was she losing her mind? Was it a dream? A spirit? Had hunger and shame twisted her into madness? But then the pig grunted softly and shifted its weight again, murmuring one more word, "soon." And in that moment, buried under the scent of rot and the echoes of laughter still ringing in her head, Beulah felt the first strange flicker of something she had never known in that pen. Power. Long before the laughter and long before the girl in the pig pen, Akuzi was ruled by a king whose greed was only matched by his fear. They called him a Bagbo the Proud, a man whose crown sat upon a head swollen with ego. He built stone walls around his palace, taxed even the rain that fell, and silenced any tongue that spoke against him. But in the shadow of his rule lived a woman, Nundu, whose fire could not be doused. Nundu was no noble. She was a healer with fingers stained by roots and ash, a woman who cured sickness the royal priest declared incurable. When the king's first wife fell ill, it was Nundu who healed her. But Abagbo hated the power of others, especially that which came from women outside his court. So he summoned her, offered her a position in the palace, but only if she gave up her hut, her herbs, and her free tongue. Nundu refused. And for her defiance, the king called her a witch. They paraded her through the village, mocked her, spat at her, then threw her into the pig pen behind the palace, declaring, "Let your swine judge your soul." It was meant to be her end. But it wasn't. Nundu did not die. The pigs did not harm her. Instead, they surrounded her, pressed close, and watched her. For days, she neither ate nor drank. Then, on the seventh night, under a sky that bled red with thunderclouds, the pigs rose. They walked on two legs. They broke the pen. And by morning, Abagbo's bones were found scattered near the shrine at the edge of the forest, his skull gnawed clean. The legend said that Nundu vanished into the forest, where she buried her rage beneath the roots of a sacred tree. And from that day forward, the people of Akuzi never ate pigs again. They became symbols of fear. Sacred. Untouched. Some said they carried curses in their flesh. Others said Nundu's spirit lived among them still. Few dared speak her name. But the shrine still stood. It was said that those who sought it found answers they didn't want. The trail to it was tangled and half forgotten, but one man lived nearby, a bent-backed madman named Ajala, who spoke more to wind than to people and wore bones in his beard. He was considered cursed. Children ran when they saw him. Women crossed themselves and turned their faces. Yet it was Ajala who found Beulah one morning after she followed a pig beyond the edge of the village. She hadn't meant to follow it. The pig, black with a strange golden patch near its eye, had nudged her awake before dawn, grunted, then trotted off. Something in her chest pulled her after it. Deeper and deeper past the trees until mist swallowed the sound of the river and the smell of firewood faded from her skin. The shrine stood in a clearing, a circle of stones slick with moss, a tree with roots like clawed fingers reaching through old graves. The pig sat before it like a priest. And Ajala sat beside the pig, carving something into wood. "You walk with them now," Ajala said without looking at her. Like she did. Beulah hesitated. "Who?" His eyes met hers, cloudy, yellowed, but alert. "The first one. The one who bled into their mouths and turned their hunger holy." He tapped the wood in his hands. It was a carving of a woman with wild hair, a crown of tusks, and pigs curled around her ankles. "You don't know it yet," he muttered. "But you carry her rage." The pigs remember. They remember what men forget. Beulah didn't know how long she sat there, listening as Ajala whispered stories half in rhyme, half in madness. He told of Abagbo's downfall, of Nundu's walk into the forest. Of how, even now, pigs gathered when lies were spoken, when injustice was thick in the air. How they could smell betrayal like smoke. How they sometimes talked. When she finally stood to leave, the pig followed her partway home, then vanished into the trees. From that day, something shifted. The pigs near her pen began acting differently. When the village children came to throw pebbles or leftovers, the pigs would rise, not in anger, but in silent warning. They would form a ring around her, standing shoulder to shoulder. Once, when a boy tossed hot coals at her feet, the largest pig charged, snapping its jaws and chasing him halfway down the hill. They had become more than beasts. They were sentinels. Her stepmother noticed it too. At night, she would stare out the window longer, eyes narrowing toward the pen. She stopped beating Beulah. Stopped mocking her. Once, Beulah caught her murmuring prayers, fumbling her fingers over a necklace of black stones. But fear was a poor mask. In her tightening mouth and restless hands, Beulah saw it. One afternoon, the village erupted in panic. A child, barely 5, ran screaming from behind the yam stall. It talked, he cried. The pig talked. It said my name. A crowd formed quickly. The pig in question stood near the watering hole, completely still. Several men swore they saw it mouth something before it snorted and walked off. By sunset, the village priest stood at the center square, sweat pouring down his face as he declared the event a bad omen. He raised his staff, speaking to the heavens. Such things are not natural. The forest stirs. Old spirits rise. We must cleanse ourselves or be devoured. But the pigs had already chosen their side. That night, Bulow sat in her pen with a bowl of dry cassava and silence all around. The pigs lay near her, breathing slow and steady. One grunted softly, rolled over, and muttered. Soon. And for the first time, Bulow didn't flinch. The sun rose early on the festival of yam planting, casting golden fingers across the earth and stirring Akuzi to life. Drums echoed from the village square, and laughter rang louder than usual. Bulow stood at the edge of it all, muddy and silent, her eyes fixed on the dancers in bright wraps and rattling beads. She knew better than to walk among them. On festival days, the cruelty wore colorful clothes. Her stepmother, Ogia, bustled near the center, wearing a head wrap so high it touched her shoulders when she turned. She had dressed her sons in fine tunics that shimmered when they moved, their sandals newly bought from the market at Odin. Her youngest, Tai, barely 10 and quick with his fists, spotted Bulow standing at the edge of the pig pen and grinned. He broke from the crowd and swaggered over with 2 friends trailing him like shadows. Why don't pigs dance? He called out. Bulow kept her eyes on the ground. Because they're too busy lying in their own filth, like you. The boys howled with laughter. Tai leapt over the fence and landed with a squelch in the muck beside her. Before she could react, he shoved her hard, and she stumbled backward into the wet, reeking mud. Her hands sank deep into the slime, her wrapper soaking with rot. The pigs stirred. One let out a low grunt, not playful, not curious. Tai laughed harder, stepping closer. Did I wake your little husbands, pig girl? Bulow looked up slowly, eyes narrowing. Her face was streaked with wet filth, her braids matted to her forehead. For the first time in weeks, she spoke. Go back. Tai blinked, caught off guard. The pigs rose to their feet. She said it again, louder. Go back. But the boy didn't. Instead, he raised his foot, meaning to press it on her shoulder and shove her deeper. The moment his foot lifted, a large pig lunged from the side. It didn't bite. It didn't growl. It stood between them, snorting, eyes locked on the boy. Tai hesitated. Another pig stepped up. Then another. Within seconds, he was surrounded, 4 pigs, shoulder to shoulder, jaws slightly open. The laughter died in his throat. He scrambled out of the pen and ran, his 2 friends trailing behind him, casting terrified glances over their shoulders. By nightfall, drums still played in the distance, and the villagers danced well past sundown. But Tai did not return home. At first, no one noticed. Children wandered late on festival nights. But when the music stopped and the fires dimmed, Ogia began to pace. Where's Tai? She asked. Her elder son shrugged. He was by the river. No, I saw him near the pen, said one girl. Throwing mud at the pig girl. Ogia turned sharply toward the pen. It stood quiet in the moonlight, Bulow curled in the far corner, asleep, or pretending to be. The pigs shifted restlessly around her. By morning, the panic had settled like a heavy blanket over the village. A search began. Men with torches swept the woods, the riverbanks, and even the hills where goats grazed. But there was no sign of the boy. What they did find was a dark smear near the pig pen, streaks of blood in the mud, too fresh to be old, too thick to be mistaken. Ogia shrieked when she saw it and dropped to her knees, wailing so loudly it silenced the birds. Witch, she screamed, pointing at Bulow. You did this. You jealous little pig daughter. The villagers gathered quickly. Some murmured in agreement. Others looked uncertain. She cursed him, Ojia cried, tearing at her head wrap. She speaks with demons in the mud. My son is gone, and she lies there like a queen of filth. Bulow stood quietly inside the pen, the pigs forming a tight circle around her. Their eyes gleamed in the sunlight, brighter than they should have. Red flickered in their gaze like coal in a dying fire. She's not normal, whispered one woman. I heard her talking to them. She doesn't eat, another said. Not like us. Maybe not at all. The village priest arrived, his staff striking the ground. He looked at Bulow for a long time, then at the pigs, who stared back with unreadable calm. Let the gods decide, he said finally. We will wait. 3 days. If the boy does not return, we will cleanse the pen. And the girl. That night, the pigs did not sleep. They circled the pen in slow, deliberate paths, snouts sniffing the ground, tails twitching. Their bodies seemed larger, their steps heavier. Bulow sat among them, eyes wide open, heart beating like a drum in her chest. She heard it then, soft, but unmistakable. Bulow. She froze. Bulow, daughter of the wronged. The voice came from the mud, from the wind, from inside the bellies of the pigs, and yet from none of them. She looked around wildly, but there were only the pigs, watching her with glowing eyes. Daughter of the wronged. Her breath shook in her chest. Something in her blood stirred. A pig near the center of the pen stopped, snorted, and began digging with its hooves. The mud churned. It scraped faster, deeper, until it pulled something from the filth, a shape long buried, caked in earth. It dropped it at her feet. Her hands trembled as she picked it up. It was a bracelet, bones strung together with dark, water-worn thread. Simple, strong, and unmistakable. Her father's. He had worn it always, even in sleep. She had played with it as a child, tracing the grooves of each carved bone, listening to him tell her stories of his youth. She had watched it sway at his wrist the day he left and never returned. Now, it was covered in pig blood and mud. She didn't cry. She didn't scream. She only stared down at it in silence as the pigs gathered close, their breath hot and wet, their eyes reflecting the pale moonlight. Somewhere deep in the forest, a branch cracked. And in the distance, a voice laughed, a laugh that didn't sound human. The sky bled with ash-gray clouds the morning Bulow returned to the forest shrine. Her hands were cold, her father's bone bracelet wrapped tightly around her wrist with a strip of twine torn from her wrapper. The pigs had followed her to the edge of the village but stopped at the roots of the first trees, watching in silence. She went alone from there, barefoot, her feet sinking into wet earth with each step. She didn't knock when she reached Agila's hut. The door was crooked and open anyway, hanging like an old tongue from a split mouth. Inside, the shrine-keeper was crouched before a fire, stirring something dark in a clay bowl. I knew you'd come, he said without looking. Your blood was always loud. Bulow stepped forward, her voice steadier than she thought it would be. Tell me the truth. Agila turned. His eyes, pale as river stone, blinked slowly. You sure you want it? Truth has teeth. I've seen the teeth, she said, raising her wrist. Now show me what bit. The old man sighed and reached into a bundle behind him, pulling out a folded cloth. From it, he unwrapped a drawing, painted on animal skin. It showed a woman, barefoot, bare-armed, wrapped in red, with pigs curled around her feet and fire behind her eyes. Her name was Zatsi, Agila whispered. Your grandmother. Bulow leaned forward, breath-catching. She was born when the king of Akuzi ruled like a god. A Bagbo the Proud, they called him. He feared nothing but shame. Zatsi was beautiful, strong-willed, sharp-tongued. She worked as a healer, same as me, same as you'll become. But a Bagbo saw her as a threat. He claimed she seduced his son, though everyone knew it was his son who forced himself on her. She bore the child still. That boy was your father. Bulow swallowed, heart thudding. They beat her for it, Agila continued. paraded her through the square in rags. Said she shamed the royal family, said she deserved to eat with the animals. They threw her into the pig pen to die. He paused, voice growing softer. But Zatsi didn't die. She didn't cry. She didn't beg. Instead, she pressed her wounds to the pigs. She whispered her pain into their ears, fed them her rage like warm milk. And they drank it. They drank and drank, until it changed them. Ajala's eyes met hers, filled with something between awe and terror. The night they came out of that pen, no one forgot it. He turned and tapped the edge of the bowl with a bone spoon. They didn't eat at random, he said. Only the guilty. The pigs see hearts, not faces. If you've sinned, they'll smell it in your skin. And my father? Bulow asked, voice tight. Ajala nodded slowly. He knew the truth. He knew what they did to Zatsi. When he grew, he tried to speak out. Said the shrine should be cleaned. Said the pigs were not cursed, but protectors. He wanted the elders to declare her name sacred. Bulow's breath hitched. They fed him to the pigs, didn't they? The old man didn't answer with words. He reached under the cloth again and pulled out another bracelet, its twin. Bones carved in identical shape, but burned at the ends, scorched black. Only guiltless blood calls them master, he said. You didn't choose this. Your blood did. The pigs smell it on you, Zatsi's blood, her fury. Her pain lives in you. That's why they follow. That's why they obey. Bulow stood in silence. The fire crackled low beside them. In her ears, she could hear the faintest snort outside. One of the pigs had followed after all. She didn't need to see it to know. They're not monsters, she said quietly. No, Ajala replied. They're judges. Bulow stared into the fire. The truth pulsed in her veins now, thudding louder than fear. All this time she thought she was cursed, filthy, unloved. But she was something far older, something Akuzi had tried to forget. The pigs didn't guard her because they pitied her. They weren't just drawn to her because of coincidence or hunger. They were hers. Bound to her by blood, by betrayal, by the cries of a woman once broken in the same mud. And they only ate those who deserved it. She remembered the way they'd watched Toy. Not snarling. Not wild. Just waiting, like a judge waits for a verdict to be spoken. Her stepmother's screams echoed in her head. The villagers' frightened murmurs. The priest's threats. But Bulow felt no fear now. Only purpose. I am not their victim, she whispered. I am their queen. Ajala didn't argue. He simply reached into the ashes beside the fire and handed her a clay pendant, shaped like a pig's tusk wrapped in thorns. If you wear this, he said, the guilty will tremble when they see you. The pigs already know. Bulow took it and tied it around her neck. Outside, the pig let out a long, low grunt. Not a warning. Not a threat. A greeting. It began slowly, like rot under floorboards, silent, creeping, dismissed until it was too late to ignore. First was Osei, the old basket weaver with a back like a coiled rope. He had always laughed the loudest whenever Bulow passed, spitting at her feet and muttering, even dung would weep if it had to lie beside her. One morning, he went out to fetch water and never returned. His empty bucket was found at the edge of the pig pen, tilted slightly, as if dropped mid-step. No signs of struggle. No blood. Just vanished. Whispers started. Murmurs passed like wind through dry leaves. Then it was Euroa, the butcher's daughter. She had once smeared pig dung on Bulow's wrapper and tied her to the fence during the last dry season. She disappeared during midday, right in the heart of the village. Witnesses claim they saw her walking toward the pig pen with a bowl of scraps and then, nothing. The bowl was later found in the mud, cracked clean in half. By the time the third disappearance struck, a merchant who refused to sell Bulow water even when she offered coin, the laughter had died. Children stopped jeering when they walked past the pig pen. Adults avoided it altogether, eyes darting anywhere else. Even Ogia no longer cursed Bulow's name in the mornings. She lit more incense in her hut now, leaving offerings of yam slices and smoked fish at her doorway. No one accused Bulow directly. Not out loud. But they knew. Or rather, they feared what they suspected. And fear, when cornered, claws for answers. So they gathered. The village council, 6 elders with tired eyes and trembling hands, met beneath the palm shelter behind the longhouse. The smell of sweat and incense clung to the air. Words were whispered, not shouted. Eyes flicked toward shadows before each sentence. "They're cursed," muttered one. "We've let them live too long. We must rid the village of them," another croaked. "Salt the pen. Burn the beasts. What of the girl?" No one answered. Chief Abasuyi, the eldest and boldest of the council, slammed his fist on the ground. "Enough. This is madness. They're pigs, nothing more. We've allowed fear to rot our bones. Tonight, I will order the pit filled. No more pigs. No more nonsense." They agreed. Hesitantly, but they agreed. That night, the chief vanished. His sandals were found just outside his hut, Saul's still warm. His door was open. The fire still burning in the hearth. No screams. No footprints. Just, gone. And beside the threshold, half buried in the earth, was a pig's hoofprint. Larger than any they'd ever seen. Panic spread like floodwater. Some tried to flee the village, but were stopped by walls of pigs that appeared without warning, blocking paths, standing in still rows with red-lit eyes, silent and unmoving. One woman claimed her torch went out the moment she raised it at them. Another said the pigs stared into her soul and showed her sins. Children cried at night. Not from hunger. From dreams. They dreamed of pigs, of jaws dripping with blood, of voices whispering in the tongues of the vanished. "I saw my Baba," one boy sobbed. "He told me to run. He said she sees everything." Villagers avoided their beds. Fires were kept burning through the night. Even the priest, once so bold, now fasted every other day and carved sigils into the earth around the shrine. And Bulow? She walked through the village now without lowering her head. She moved with quiet grace, her tattered wrapper flowing behind her like royal silk. Her feet never rushed. Her eyes never darted. People stepped aside when they saw her coming. The pigs followed her. Not all at once. Never in a swarm. But always at least one, tail flicking, hooves steady, breathing low and deep. They guarded her without command. They knew her scent, her silence, her pain. She didn't speak unless spoken to. But when she did, her voice no longer shook. "You should not have laughed," she told the wife of the merchant one day. The woman fell to her knees and wept. Bulow said nothing more. By the time the moon reached its fullest, the pig pen was no longer a place of filth. It had changed. The mud no longer stank, it smelled of wet earth and ashwood. The fence had collapsed long ago, yet the pigs remained, never straying beyond the boundaries of the place they had called home for generations. And at the center of it all sat Bulow. Not crouched. Not hidden. She sat with her legs folded beneath her, straight-backed, eyes half-closed. Around her, the pigs moved like priests in sacred procession, circling, pacing, watching. One pig, enormous and scarred across its snout, approached her slowly and lowered its head onto her lap. Bulow placed her hand gently on its crown. The sky darkened. Wind stirred the dry leaves. Somewhere in the village, a scream pierced the silence. Bulow did not flinch. She whispered to the pig. It grunted once, and was gone. A moment later, another scream. And in that still, trembling hour, the village of Akuzi understood something they had tried to deny since the first bone vanished in the mud. The pigs did not act on hunger. They acted on command. The wind carried the smell of fear long before the people woke. It blew through thatched roofs and stirred cooking pots left outside, curling around sleeping bodies like a warning. But none felt it more than Ogia. Her bones knew what her tongue dared not say. She had packed in silence. Clothes first, the fine ones she never let Bulow touch. Then her youngest son's sandals, hurriedly shoved into a bag of dried maize and a half-gourd of water. Gold rings from under her floor mat. The rest she left behind. She didn't need the past. Only distance. But when she stepped into the night with her son clutched tight, she froze. There they stood. A line of pigs, 12, maybe more, stretched across the path out of the village. They did not grunt. They did not charge. They simply stood, shoulders squared, tusks glinting in the moonlight. She tried the other path, the narrow trail past the old shrine. They were there too. Their eyes shimmered, catching starlight like mirrors. They didn't move, yet she felt pursued. Surrounded. Trapped. By morning, she was back in the village. Word spread fast. She came back shaking. They stopped her. The pigs wouldn't let her go. Some watched in silence. Others turned away. No one offered her help. Ogia made her way to the pig pen like a shadow in daylight, trembling, lips cracked, her son trailing behind her like an afterthought. Bulow sat as she always did now, legs folded beneath her, hands resting calmly on her lap. Around her, the pigs wandered in slow circles, a quiet rhythm to their movements. One nuzzled her arm like a child seeking comfort. Ogia fell to her knees at the edge of the mud. Bulow. The name felt heavy in her mouth, like bone swallowed wrong. I didn't know. I didn't understand. You were a girl. A stubborn girl. But I had no right. Bulow did not move. I was cruel, Ogia whispered, voice catching. I admit it. But I was broken too. I had lost your father. I was scared. I didn't know how to raise you. You reminded me too much of him. Of the wife before me. Of everything I couldn't be. Her voice cracked. She began to sob. I was wrong. I was wrong every day. I see that now. Still, Bulow said nothing. Ogia pulled a small pouch from beneath her wrapper and held it out. Gold. Enough to start again. We could leave this place. You and I, and your brother. We are still family. She searched Bulow's face for softness. For the child she once controlled. Bulow did not look at her. One of the pigs grunted. It was a short, low sound. Not angry. Not hungry. Just, final. And one by one, the pigs turned from her. They walked back into the pen. Ogia remained kneeling, the pouch still extended, her tears falling into the dirt. Bulow stood slowly. She stepped down from her throne of mud and walked past her stepmother without a glance. No words. No hatred. No forgiveness. Ogia sobbed until her chest ached. She did not understand what the silence meant. That night, the village held its breath. They heard it long after midnight, the sharp shatter of clay, the dragging of something across the floor, the rustle of thatch. Then a scream. Ogia's scream. One long, piercing wail that twisted the wind and froze the hearts of all who heard it. No one dared run to her hut. No one lit a torch. In the morning, nothing was left but scattered gold pieces and pig tracks in the ash around her doorway. Her son was found sleeping unharmed on the far side of the hut, wrapped in an old wrapper of Bulow's he had once stolen to play with. He did not speak for 2 days. And Bulow? She sat in the pen as always. But her eyes were red. Tears ran silently down her cheeks, cutting through the dirt and smoke smudged across her face. Not for the woman now gone. Not for justice. But for the girl she had once been. The girl who waited for a warm word that never came. The girl who had tried to be good. The girl who once believed that family could be chosen. She wept, not because her heart still hurt, but because part of it no longer could. The priest had not been in Odom long, but fear bowed quicker than respect. He wore black robes with crimson threads like veins down his arms, and his eyes never blinked when he spoke. "This girl," he said to the crowd gathered in the central square, "walks with beasts. She eats with them. Commands them. And now the pigs walk into dreams and leave bones behind. You think this is justice?" The crowd murmured. "It is not. It is curse. She is not blessed. She is not queen of pigs. She is what the old books warned us about, the fire-bearer, the cursed child of Egwa's wrath, born from forgotten blood and kept alive by evil." Some cried out. Others crossed their arms in doubt. But the louder ones, the angry ones, had suffered too much. They had buried kin, seen homes trampled, and now they needed something to punish. Something to burn. By sundown, they dragged Bulow from the pen. She did not fight. Her face was calm, and her hands stayed folded even as they tied them behind her back with the same rope once used to bind traitors. They took her to the old pit. It had not been used in decades, a deep circular hollow of stone and packed earth, blackened by the memory of fire. It was where the village once cast its so-called witches. If the flames did not kill them, it was said the gods had spoken. But the gods rarely spoke, and the flames always did. Elders gathered in a semicircle above the pit. Villagers stood behind them, silent, holding torches and sticks, not knowing if they had come to witness a cleansing or commit one. The priest raised his staff. "She walks with swine. Now she shall burn with them." They lowered her slowly into the center of the pit. Dust rose with her every step. She did not look up. The rope around her wrists pulled tight as they fastened it to a pole in the center. Then silence. A match was struck. A hand trembled. The first stick was lowered. And the ground began to shake. A low rumble, like distant thunder rolling across the belly of the world. Then it came. Stampeding. From the east. From the river. From the trees. From every path. Pigs. Not 10. Not 20. Hundreds. Eyes glowing orange-red like fire held behind bone. Tusks glinting. Jaws stained dark with something older than blood. They came in silence, not a squeal among them, only the thunder of hooves and the wind they carried. People screamed. Some ran. But the pigs did not touch the children. Nor the women who had fed Beulah once. They knew who to chase. The elders who had raised their hands for death, they ran, but the pigs followed. Not to kill. To corner. To snarl and hold until their legs gave out and their mouths begged forgiveness. The priest tried to raise his staff again, to chant some holy command, but one pig leapt and crushed it beneath a hoof. Another took his robe between its teeth and dragged him from the edge of the pit like a rag. And still, Beulah stood in the center, unmoving, eyes closed, as if listening to something deeper than the panic around her. Then the earth cracked. Not wide, but deep. The old pit split down its middle, and smoke erupted like breath from a buried god. The rope burned away. The flames rose. And from them, so did Beulah. She walked through the fire as if it were mist. Her skin glowed faintly. Her dress, torn and darkened by ash, rippled around her like shadow. The pigs formed a circle behind her, not wild now, but still. Reverent. Watching. The villagers fell to their knees. Some chanted her name. Others simply bowed their heads. No one knew what they had seen, goddess, ghost, curse, or something worse. But none could deny it now. The fire had spoken. And Beulah had not burned. The night after the trial was silent, not with peace, but with awe. No one dared approach Beulah. No one dared ask what she was, or who she had become. At dawn, before even the cock crowed, she was gone. She did not pack food. She did not take a staff. She simply walked. Out of the pit. Out of the village. Into the woods. And behind her came the pigs. Not in chaos, but in order. A procession. Their steps soft, their eyes calm now, as if the rage in them had fulfilled its duty and was no longer needed. She entered the ancestral forest where no one had walked in years, where the trees grew so thick the sun could barely breathe through their leaves. The air was damp, the earth cool. The smell of moss and old wood clung to everything. Here, even birds were silent. But Beulah kept walking. Her bare feet made no sound on the soil. And still, the pigs followed. In the center of the forest, where the trees curled toward the sky like arms in mourning, there was a clearing with a circle of stones, ancient and cracked, carved with symbols no one alive could read. Beulah stepped into the middle and knelt. She pressed her palm into the earth. "I am ready," she whispered. The wind shifted. And then, warmth. From the trees behind her came a glow, golden and soft. The shape of a woman began to form, clothed in beads and smoke, her face old and kind but not weak. Her grandmother. The one who used to hum lullabies to her under the stars. The one whose stories were always full of truth hidden in animals and spirits. The one they buried without a real grave. The spirit knelt beside her. "The pigs," she said, "remember what humans forget." Beulah closed her eyes. "Then I will remember with them." Her grandmother touched her chest, and Beulah felt it, not fire, not cold, but weight. As though the sorrow of 100 forgotten girls had settled inside her ribs. "You are not here for revenge, Beulah," the spirit said. "You are here for balance. The pigs do not kill the innocent. They only eat what the world has tried to hide." Beulah looked around. "Then I will live where nothing hides." And so she did. At the edge of the forest, not too far from the village but hidden enough to be feared, the pigs began to build, not with wood, but with instinct. They dug a wide space and shaped it with mud and leaves, stones and bark, till it stood like a low temple with no doors. The ground around it was soft and clean. The trees grew in a circle, leaving her roof open to the stars. This became her palace. Not of gold. Not of power. But of judgment. And people began to come. The first was a man whose brother had stolen his land. He came trembling, barefoot, whispering her name. He found Beulah sitting in the center of the mud palace, her eyes half-lidded, her skin marked with streaks of ash. The pigs sat around her like statues. He bowed low. "He lies about the boundary," he said. "I need your judgment." Beulah said nothing. The pigs grunted softly, and rose. They circled the man once. Then stepped back. She raised a hand. "You have spoken true." The next day, the brother came. He said he had done nothing wrong. That his brother was greedy. That it was all a mistake. But as he spoke, one of the pigs crept forward. It bared its teeth, not in hunger, but in warning. The man stuttered. He looked at the pig. Then at Beulah. And he dropped to his knees. "I lied," he whispered. I took what was not mine." The pig sat down again. Judgment complete. Word of this spread like fire in dry leaves. Soon, women with weeping eyes and men with shaking hands came. Some brought disputes. Some brought guilt. Some brought nothing but silence and a need to be seen. Each time, Beulah sat in the center. Each time, the pigs listened. Each time, truth was pulled into the open like a bone from the dirt. Children began to sing songs about her. The elders said nothing, but their voices trembled when they spoke her name. She became more than a girl. More than a witch. She became the pig queen, the one whose throne was mud, whose crown was silence, and whose eyes saw through the skin into the guilt beneath. Some say her skin turned darker than the forest, a shade only spirits wore. Some say her voice could calm even the hungriest beast. And some say that if you come with clean hands, the pigs will sit at your side. But if you lie even once, they will smile without joy. And you will hear them breathe through their teeth. Because the pigs remember. And so does she. It was a feast like none the village had seen in decades. The last of the elders, the richest ones, had grown fatter than the pigs they used to spit at. Their compounds, now brimming with gold trinkets, were built on the ashes of the weak. The lands they ate from had once belonged to mothers who screamed into the wind for justice. The laughter they shared was always laced with the names they'd ruined. And now, they were celebrating. A harvest they didn't plant. A peace they didn't earn. A lie they had repeated until they forgot it was won. They sent word far and wide, "Come eat with us." The drums beat. The fires were stoked. But deep in the forest, in the mud palace beneath the stars, Beulah stirred. She did not go herself. She sent one pig. It walked quietly into the village, unnoticed among the dust and chaos. It did not grunt. It did not look for food. It simply watched. On the day of the feast, the village square was filled with tables, long, beautiful, carved from stolen trees. The meat was plentiful: smoked goat, roasted fowl, wild game caught from traps the elders claimed they'd laid themselves. Wine poured like rivers. Women danced in the fading light, their wrappers bright and tight. Men leaned back and beat their chests with laughter, slapping each other's backs and boasting of how far they had come. They toasted themselves. And when someone mentioned Beulah, someone always did, the laughter sharpened. That witch? Still wallowing in mud with beasts? She should be grateful. If we hadn't cast her out, she'd still be stealing our crops. I heard she thinks pigs can judge. Next she'll be saying chickens can write laws. Roars of laughter. Even the children giggled, not knowing why. The pig sent by Beulah stood at the edge of the square. Its eyes glowed softly under the moon. No one saw it. But it saw everything. And then, the meat began to taste strange. Not bitter. Not sour. Just wrong. One man paused, his lips slick with grease. He frowned. "Is this pork?" Another laughed. "You think we'd waste pigs on a feast?" But more began to murmur. Some spit out chunks. Others looked at their hands as if they'd touched something cursed. A woman gagged. Then a man coughed. Again. Harder. One by one, the laughter turned to sputters. The music stopped. Eyes widened. Throats clenched. And then, a scream. Dozens choked, faces purpled, fists slamming on tables, mouths foaming. And from the shadows outside the square, came a sound. Thuds. Dozens of them. Then hundreds. Pigs. Not small, snorting things, but great, powerful, snarling pigs with gleaming tusks and red-ringed eyes. Their breath came in clouds. Their trotters crushed stones. They came not with chaos, but with purpose. They broke the gates. They leapt over tables. And they attacked, but only the ones who laughed at her name. Only those who voted for her burning. Only those who sold land that wasn't theirs. Screams filled the air. Meat was flung. Wine spilled. Bones cracked. The feast turned to frenzy. The beautiful tables flipped. The carved dishes shattered. And in the center of the madness, one woman walked through the smoke. Her feet bare. Her skin shining with ash. Her eyes glowing like still coals. Beulah. The pigs stopped when they saw her. The choking ceased. The silence settled. She stepped past overturned chairs and the twitching bodies of the guilty. She looked at the few survivors, shivering beneath tables and hiding behind torn curtains. She did not raise her voice. She simply said, "You fed pigs lies. They fed you truth." No one spoke. No one dared. Behind her, the pigs licked their snouts clean. They did not hunger anymore. Around her, the tables were empty, except for bones. And in the center of the square where joy once lived, only silence remained. That night, no one in the village slept. That night, the stories changed. They no longer called her cursed. They no longer called her witch. They called her something worse. Truth. In Akuzi, no one mocks beggars anymore. It doesn't matter how ragged their clothes are, how wild their hair looks, or if they speak to unseen things. Mothers pull their children close and tell them, kindness is safer than pride. Fathers teach their sons to bow their heads when someone asks for water. Even the market women, once sharp-tongued and loud, lower their voices when someone comes barefoot to their stall. Because everyone remembers the feast. Not just what happened, but how it smelled, of roasting flesh and fear. And more than that, they remember what came after. The silence. The way the pigs walked calmly back into the forest, as if nothing had happened. The way the blood soaked into the ground but never left a stain. The way Bulow never looked back, only forward, as she disappeared once again into the dark trees. Since that day, the pigpens are sacred. No one builds them too close to the house. Children are taught to drop bits of yam, meat, or mashed plantain beside the gates, just in case, their mothers whisper. You never know who's watching. And no one speaks her name with a smile. Not anymore. If you laugh at Bulow, even in another village, even in another country, someone always hears of it. And days later, pigs will show up at your door. Not one. Not two. A herd. They don't grunt or snort. They don't ask for food. They just wait. They don't blink. They don't leave. And everyone knows what that means. You pack your things. You leave in the night. You pray that someone else's name comes to her first. Because in Akuzi, they say she's still alive. Some swear they've seen her, deep in the ancestral forest, walking through the mist barefoot, pigs at her side like guards. Some say she hasn't aged. Some say she looks more than human now, that her skin gleams like wet stone and her eyes carry the weight of all who've lied. Others claim she died long ago, and that the pigs remember in her place. The pigs remember what humans forget, the elders say. And so, the pigs remember who spat on her face. Who called her dirty. Who threw her into the pig pen and laughed while she slept in the filth. And when they remember, they do not forgive. In secret corners of the village, people whisper other stories too. They say the pigs don't eat anymore, not unless she whispers a name into their ears. That if your house is too quiet at night and the wind smells like wet fur and earth, she's near. That if you dream of mud and hooves, if you wake up with your feet dirty and your heart heavy, you've already been judged. Sometimes a new widow finds pig tracks outside her compound. Sometimes a wealthy merchant is found dead in the fields, no wounds, just terror on his face and mud on his tongue. No one investigates. No one asks questions. Justice, they say, walks on four legs now. And the girl they mocked, the one they tossed into the dirt, the one who rose from the mud, is more than a myth. She is balance. She is warning. She is memory. And so every full moon, mothers take their children to the edge of the forest. They stand still. They pour small bowls of porridge into the grass. They say thank you. Not out of worship. Out of fear. Out of respect. Because legends change over time, but in Akuzi, one thing has never changed. They laughed while she slept in the pig pen. But now the pigs only hunger for those who laughed.